Folks are, oh, thank you, Matt. So, good afternoon, everyone. So far, I see joining us Brenda and Diane and Lori Davis and Rebecca Parsons, Diane Hodge and Brenda Yetman. So, thank you for joining us. We're going to wait another minute or so. We're expecting a few more folks, so we're going to give them a chance to join in, and then we'll do some brief intros and then get going with the conversation. So, hang in there for another minute or two, and then we'll get going. I guess, Matt, we could have waited on the recording, but so be it. Well, and then if so, welcome again, everyone. I'm Chris Patterson, and I'm, I guess, the co-host, co-facilitator for today's session. This is the second of two information sessions we're doing with the CBN Working Better Together project that is co-hosted and co-sponsored by the towns of Harbor Grace and towns of Carbonear. And last week we had an interesting discussion around chambers of commerce, and this week we are going to hear a little bit more about regional development associations. And my Before we jump in and introduce our guest, Boyan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. With Chris, I'm going to be your co-host. This is the kind of work Chris and I do, facilitation around regional development. And I also teach podcasting and storytelling through an organization called Story Center.
Thank you. So just as a reminder for folks, this process, we had three initial sort of community conversations around what were the different ways that folks could organize themselves in a regional setting to help businesses and communities and not-for-profits work work better together, communicate, collaborate more effectively. From those initial sessions, what we heard is some interest in two or three different types of organizational models, one of which was something akin to a regional development association. So we reached out to Ron Laudadio, who I'll introduce shortly, to see if he'd be willing to join us, and he was. So Ron, I first met Ron, I guess, almost a couple years ago now, when I was still with the Harris Center, and we were doing a series of sessions on climate adaptation around the province, and we wanted to do one in the Codroy Valley area, and we reached out to Ron, and I was incredibly impressed with as a regional development association, not only that they were sort of very active, but also the way they were being active, in that they're in a setting where there really aren't, I guess there are no municipalities per se. There's no incorporated towns. It's all LSDs or other. And so the way they went about sort of engaging with folks and bringing people together, I was and continue to be very impressed of how they're doing that. So I reached out to Ron to see if he'd be willing to sort of share some of their experiences and stories with us here in the Bacalou region. And I'm pleased to obviously that he said yes. So Ron, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, the way we're going to do it, and as I let folks know before, Boyne and I are going to sort of have a little conversation first with Ron, for those of you attendees. So right now I'm showing six, but I only see five names, so I'm not sure what that means. Uh, but
Means
so
that you have trouble counting because I see six.
really,
We
oh,
have Brenda, Cheryl,
yeah,
Diane, Linda, Lori, and Rebecca.
great. Yes, I have, it's not counting, it's the technology. I forgot I had to scroll down.
Oh.
So Boyne and I are gonna have a little chat with Ron. We'll have a few questions for him, and then probably, we're not probably roughly halfway through our time today, we're gonna open things up to any questions that you all have. So anytime that you have a question that you want us not to lose track of, feel free to put it right into that chat box there, and you can also use the chat box to say hello to other folks. Just, let us know you're here and listening if you'd like to. So the chat box is for you to use as you please. Um, and then we'll come back to everybody probably around 12:30 to sort of see what questions you might have for Ron to respond to. But in the meantime, Ron, can you just start us off a little bit by, take a few minutes and share a bit about the Codroy Valley Area Development Association? What is it? What's a little bit of its history and purpose, and kind of some of what it does?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So the CBADA, in its current instantiation, was actually started in 1972. And it emerged from a broader rural movement in Newfoundland and Labrador that really was focused on reacting to a high level of unemployment, government neglect, threats of resettlement. So really, it was more of a resistance kind of drive. But really, it culminated from the perspective that the those in St. John's were deliberately ignoring those in the rural communities, hoping to resettle them. But instead, RDAs were formed as a collective venture that allowed them to pool their resources and actually achieve things on their own. In a way, kind of become their own government or commons. So the purpose of the CVADA today is to support social and economic development across all of our 15 communities. We've got 15 from South Branch to Cape Anguille. We provide a forum for identifying local needs and planning and community-driven solutions. We promote local leadership. We encourage volunteer participation. And we also substantially represent the region to external agencies and, uh, and government. What else? So what do we do? Well, I would say we develop infrastructure and economic initiatives is really what we do. In the past, way back in the 70s, the RDA established our fish plant, which is now called Codroy Seafoods, which is actually in private ownership at the moment. It produced the abattoir, which is now again in private ownership now, but it created it. It created woolen mills to allow the farmers to collectively invest in carding and preparing their wool for delivery. Greenhouses. But what we do now is we focus more on tourism because that's the economic shift. Codroy Valley used to be the breadbasket of Newfoundland. Now you'd have to go a far distance to try to find a farm. But instead, there's a lot of businesses in the area that is motivated and encouraged by tourism. So we're focused now on trails, campground development, supporting our community halls, and we might be venturing in some small manufacturing. But we support the proposal writing, the funding applications, all that kind of process to it. We act as a liaison between what we were doing here as a coordination hub, really, in a way, to our regional and provincial and federal funders. So our structure and operations, yeah. So our structures and operations primarily is based on a board of directors model. Our board of directors are elected each year from the 15 valley communities. That allows us, in some weird way, we group that into 9, and then we have 2 elected individuals per group of communities. So we have 18 seats on our board of directors. It's a democratic system. We create local subcommittees if that's to run certain projects. But it's an externally funded, democratic modeled system for allowing all the communities to get together and improve their environment, their area, and their social experience, project by project. And then lastly, I'll say, and this is something that was very important to me that I brought to the CVADA, was that we have some very strong values and philosophies. Over the years, the CVADA is taking a couple bumps. Clearly, there's opportunity for abuse. And every once in a while, I don't think there was outright abuse, but there might have been misunderstanding and misinformation. But to repair that, we're focused on transparency, accountability, and equity for all. We invest a lot in diversity of thinking, inclusiveness, and I hold a very safe space for our board of varied differences of opinions to respect each other, to help each other, and for the benefit of the communities that we represent, really come up with the best solutions for them. But ultimately, for those that want things to happen in the Valley, we are a self-help model. So we are a group of volunteers that run on the board, but we react or respond to what the community needs or wants. We produce a lot of ideas and we throw the ideas out there. If the community resonates with that, then we end up staffing that with volunteers and we work on that. And then lastly, I'll say, just to give you an example of what we're doing, there's we're running on three current projects. One of them is to upgrade the Starlight Trail. For those of you who don't know, the Starlight Trail has been around for another about, say, 25, 30 years. It's been a real favorite of the community. It hikes up about 400 meters up one of the Table Mountains. And when you turn around and look at your view, it's an incredible, breathtaking view of the valley. And it's just so beautiful. And we've held it very dear. We've decided to turn it from a community secret into a tourist landmark destination for global travelers around. And so we've hired a top-notch, award-winning trail designer. They've come and gone. We've also, or just finished, we're going to award a contract this week to an award-winning trail builder to build it. And we hope to boost tourism by creating an incredible hiking experience, the likes of things that Parks Canada would actually brag a lot about. The second project we're working on is extending three-phase power to the Codroy area, where a lot of beauty exists, but no power exists. And for both of those projects, we worked with ACOA and Andrew Parsons' IET department in the province. And we've secured about $1 million for each of those projects to get executed. But then also we're taking care of one of our buildings right now, the Wetlands Interpretation Center, which is landed on a Ramsar designated site. The Ramsar designated site is a very important part of wetlands in the global ecological system. And this site is the only one in Newfoundland that's been Ramsar designated as an essential site for transitory birds and migratory birds, wildlife, and fauna. And we have a building on it, and we needed to upgrade it because it was suffering the damages of the environment as per the water. So we got funding for that to do things. So that's an example of the kind of things that we do. And hopefully, Chris, that was a good enough view of what the CBADA is and does.
Fantastic. Thank you. And just one quick follow-up, and then Boyan, I'll turn it back over to you for
Sure.
so are you so is the Development Association, I assume you're a not-for-profit. It sounds like you're the fiscal agent for the funds coming in, because if there's no municipalities to partner with, are you sort of the holder of the funds and then coordinate the work, or sort of how do you, are you not just the convener, but also sort of the holder of projects, or the coordinator of the projects themselves?
Yeah, we're a non-shareholding, non-profit organization. And so we are a corporation. We operate like a corporation. And yeah, money in, money out is the way we work. And the way that we've been operating right now is very project focused. So any of the money in is tightly secured and restricted by contract that we have with our funding parties. So yeah, I hope that helps your answer.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Turn it over to you, Boyan.
I have so many questions. Chris, you have to forgive me for going a little bit off the script here, because I'm just curious about a couple of things. You mentioned since the 70s, there was a whole bunch of enterprises that the association started, and now they're private. With the new ones, is the association actually the owner and operator of these entities that you're creating?
Oh, no. So, well, I don't want to take us off topic, just like you've done.
Sure.
But right now, the only things we own are property and buildings.
Okay.
Okay. So we just run those. We're not running any organization or enterprise. However, we are considering underneath our nonprofit corporate umbrella to create a social enterprise network. We are flirting with the idea of purchasing businesses in the area, given the fact that those that have held these buildings, these businesses for generations, are getting towards their senior ages. And if they disappear, they disadvantage the community. As it has happened in many Newfoundland communities, the last generation is living off province and not interested in coming back and running the family business. So we were considering owning and operating certain businesses in the environment. sorry, in the community, so that that way we can keep the money in the community, reinvest the money into the community, and also make sure these stores or other essential businesses don't go away and disadvantage our
It's
community. But we would
exactly.
not. But the only way that I could create that work, and I was working with my lawyer on it, and probably the best model for us to do that is to create a social enterprise that's 100% owned by the nonprofit, non-shareholding corporation.
Mm. Yeah, and sorry to get us off the main topic, but it's so interesting, and I really love that you, right from the beginning, combine the social and economic development, because sometimes we are so
Yes.
focused on economic development, we never stop to ask ourselves, what is this economic development for? But of course, that's
Yep.
the social
Yep.
component to it. Um,
Hey,
I,
O'Brien,
yeah.
can you, since you are the host, sorry, a little logistic here, can you go into your settings because I'm not even seeing in the our chat function the list of attendees, and we should be at least be able to see them. Can you just
Oh,
go in there and when maybe when you have a chance, um, you should be able to click on the three dots around the chat and enable our attendees to access the chat box if it's not already done.
oh, for sure, I can do that.
So,
Um, Before I do that, let me. Um, oh no, it's enabled. They should be able to chat with everybody.
okay, I'm just not when I click on it, I'm not seeing
Yeah.
the anything in there. So,
Okay. Um,
oh,
Let
there you
me
go.
ask Ron a question, and then we can get back to, and I'll play around with the settings to make sure that everything works. Um, I mean, you've been really busy. I like this idea of project-based development. Is there like a greater strategy behind it? How you go about picking these projects?
Uh, I think the sophistication of the strategy could be derived, but really it's kind of simple. The We get together as a board, we come up with ideas that we've learned could
Hmm.
be a benefit to the community, and we send out information about it. And so that way, so that way the community can respond to it. If they resonate, then we find ways to fund it. An example is there are a lot of younger families now in the valley, and they're faced with the fact that they have to leave the valley to survive because they've got one or two kids, and they need to have a second income. And without daycare accessible, we're basically pushing the families out. So we're creating a co-op daycare because we again threw that out for the organization and the community to come back, and we got a lot of residents and a lot of need for it. So we're working with a woman in one of our communities, and she's going to spearhead the effort of creating a co-op daycare, and we'll create a subcommittee for that. We decided that the community runs on volunteers so substantially, and we've never really turned around and said thank you. So we asked if we should do a volunteer appreciation event for the first time ever in the Valley. That got huge resonance. So we're looking for funding to actually do that as well. But we came up with other ideas that did not resonate. And so for us, we have no ego attached to it. It's just if there's no resonance, there's no momentum. If there's no momentum, we drop it. Just
Right.
works. Yep.
Works. You seem to have a huge support for the association within the community. How do you maintain that connection with the communities, and how do you remain relevant to the region?
So really, it's mostly about feedback, but it's centered in the paradigm that we are there for the community. It's not about us. We're not the big heads, the big smarts, uh, and so really we just listen, and we listen carefully and listen intently, because that way we get to reflect the needs of the community as opposed to maybe get off a little bit kilter and start to try to ram our ideas down the community's throat, which tends not to work, uh, um, as you know. So yeah, it's not a very sophisticated strategy, but it's very simple and it works. Yeah. Oh, and the other two is we constantly resonate our vision, right? And it's just that we as you can tell from my accent, I come from away. But regardless, we love this valley. We think it's incredibly beautiful. We think it's a wonderful place to live. It's got a lot to benefit from the future, but it's got a lot of issues and challenges to dodge. So we're there to try to find a way to continue the love that people share about the place that they live. And with that vision in mind, we tend to collect a lot of following that way, simply because it's just its affinity to the vision. If you love your place, then you probably like us too. That's because that's what we're here for.
That's great. Chris, would you like to get us back on track?
Well, no, I'm not getting us back on track, but I'll sort of continue this in a maybe a different way. Um, So, so Ron, we mentioned earlier, so you have no municipalities in your region. It's
No.
all LSDs, and like probably every place in Newfoundland, if you take three or more, whether towns, communities, whatever, however they're organized, they're not always going to agree on things or see things the same way. So I'm curious as you sort of do these listening and you sort of look for ideas that resonate. How active are you? I mean, what do you do when, say, seven or eight of your communities love something and a few others, say, no, we have want nothing to do with it. I mean, do you operate more and we're not going to do this unless everyone buys in, or how do you navigate between sort of different perspectives and interests among different places in the region?
Well, we never try to work on consensus. We never work on full agreement.
Yep.
What we work on is to make sure that if we're going to move forward, we're not harmful. That's all. So if some communities want to move forward, the other ones don't, we'll move forward as long as it doesn't detriment the other communities. There's no harm, no foul. And with that simple rule, we've avoided a lot of conflict. Right.
Sure. Right. So what would you say are and I know, your regional development association is, I mean, we won't pretend that yours is the model for all others. The regional development associations that are around, they're still, each one kind of has its own flavor. But
Yep.
how would you maybe just step back a little bit from, you know, the specifics and say, how would you describe the strengths and weaknesses of the regional development association model? Kind of are there things you feel like you can do very effectively, and then other things that are more challenging given your kind of the model you're working within.
Yeah, and I think from the perspective of the context of this whole panel and the whole point of it, I'll phrase it uh, I'll phrase it this way a bit. I think if I could, so the best fit situation for using an RDA would be for probably what we do, right? Which is rural or multi-community connections and regions that really lack what you're talking about, like a municipality. We have seven little LSDs in our area, but they're not really operating as local service districts, other than just simply supplying water well or community water. So we're lacking that kind of dedicated economic development staff in the area. And so I would say the RDA has really been proven very good for that. And that's how it's really provided its most benefit. The communities themselves are the ones, though, who have to fund the efforts somehow. So, if you have constantly external funding to fund whatever needs to operate, it's also a great model. It works very well that way. So I think there's a lot of benefit when you have intent and money, but you want to leave it to the community to decide specifically how that intent and money transfers into impact. Just making sure that you're properly staffing your subcommittees and your boards properly. There are limitations. There's no doubt there's limitations, and it's tied to what I was just talking about, and that is volunteer bandwidth. I'm sure everybody in Newfoundland experiences the fact that there's less than 1% of the individuals that are highly benevolent and just want to help for no reason but then to just help. Also, there's probably, my guess is 2% of the community that are helping because they just need to stay active, both socially, intellectually, and physically. So those are going to come out and help out. But in a community of 800, you're just talking about 20, maybe 25 people, right? And then the question also is the skill. So the limits the challenge that you have with an RDA like such as ours, and this is what we constantly bump into, is having enough motivation to execute on some of the things that we need to execute on when we're developing these projects and these ideas. So what I've done now is every time we run a project, we throw in an admin cost.
Hmm.
And that admin cost then allows us to hire a consultant or a local employee in the area to do the work. Because you can only ask so much from a volunteer. But when you start paying somebody a reasonable wage, things get done well. You can hire somebody from outside the community that has the skill that you need, and you can get it executed. But I would say the challenge, though, is that you need to fund things well, and that funding has to come from somewhere, and you're going to have to find a way to invest in it. Also, I would say governance fatigue as well is a challenge. And that is that sometimes there's politics that gets into the board in the conversation, and what you need is a good leader that help everyone understand and upkeep their responsibility. Because in most cases, like when I came from an urban space, it's very easy to separate social from economics. But in a rural community, social is economics. These are family-run businesses, and these are people who have grown up with each other for decades or since birth. They all know each other since their grandfather and their grandmother were still around. So it's one and the same, and sometimes there's a bit of a challenge trying to keep that respectful and caring when we're trying to suss out our problems. But otherwise, I think it's a fantastic mechanism for communities to get together. It's a commons model, and so anybody who's done their sociology or their political sci realize what commons are and aren't. It's a commons model, and not a lot of times do people realize the immediate and direct return on investment personally for what's contributed to a commons. So as a board, you always have to focus on making sure that people see the vision and see the light and see the potential gain and future of it, and invest in that notion. But you have to respect the fact that not everyone is that benevolent or that patient. And so you're not going to get a lot of contribution from certain parties in the community because they're more interested on an immediate ROI, an immediate gain for their own economics or their own social purpose. So you have to be strategic in the kind of projects and initiatives that you work on through because of those challenges.
Yep. I got one last question, but before I'm going to again put out a note to everyone who is listening so far. If you've got questions for Ron, you can put them in the chat box, put them in the Q&A box, and Boyan, I think you're going to have to be the one to monitor that rather than me since you're the host. But so if you have questions, start typing them in there, and then we'll come to those shortly. So I guess, when I first met you close to, like I said, a couple of years ago now, and as we were learning a little bit more about the Codroy Valley area, one of the things we learned back at the workshop we did back then was that really the closest thing you have to a regional entity was a volunteer fire department. So we were talking about, really there is no sort of connectivity at a regional scale, and partly because probably like in many parts of Newfoundland, folks there didn't really want another layer of what was perceived as government or perceived as a bureaucracy or any sort of organization that somehow might intrude in their lives. So I'm curious, sort of, how does the Development Association avoid sort of being labeled as another bureaucracy or as a pseudo government? I mean, how do you sort of navigate some of those relationships to help people, as you just said, sort of see the light and see the positives that the Development Association brings without potentially tapping into either fears or I'll say sort of jealousies that you're doing things that that might they somehow perceive or taking away from what they might do?
I think what matters most is really how we operate as a board. Um, uh, because we don't have anything other than a provincial and a federal government in our area, many people jump the gun and assume that we are that other entity. So we get a lot of phone calls for people to help us with, surveying their properties or finding their deeds of their grandparents' property so they can sell it. We also get a lot of phone calls about the potholes. One thing come from Ontario is that Newfoundland is a province full of potholes, and it's not missed here. That's an issue, and so we get a lot of phone calls saying, like, "What are you going to do about the potholes?" Also, yeah, we made a mistake of getting involved with the World Energy GH2 initiative here in this local area of considering bringing wind turbines to the area. And our interest was to hold sessions that allowed misinformation to get pushed away. But it was misconstrued as the fact that we were actually for World Energy GH2 bringing wind turbines. Our vehement position was that as a development association, we are looking to see how we could benefit and maximize the benefit and impact if they came. And we're also focused on maximizing the impact and the gain of the community if they didn't come, because there's pros and cons either way. We also had both provincial representatives of our region in the same AGM yesterday. So we had Scott and we had Cal there, both a Liberal representative and the PC representative. And we don't have an NDP representative in this area. So we do take steps to try to demonstrate the fact that although somehow mistakenly we're perceived as a government entity, that we are not. And that we play both sides. We're very focused on making sure we play both sides. Oh, and the last thing I'll say about that too is our transparency. So our website is thecodroyvalley.com. And so you can see who's on the board, who's on the subcommittees, what we're actually doing. And we're very vocal with the fact that there are people on our board who are PC. There are very strong PC advocates. There are people on our board that are liberals. Hell, there's 2 people on our board that love Trump. So what we're trying to say is that we have a diversity in our board. We respect that diversity, and we're not beholden to any kind of a line that you want to draw on the sand. We are just merely and humbly focused on the benefit of the community either way.
Yeah. Great.
Ron, we have a question from Matt that may be best answered not in writing because it probably requires a little longer explanation. He asks, how does the
I can read it. No, I can read it.
Okay.
So yeah, the way that we work with that is through private funding. So
Boyan, sorry, Ron.
What?
Boyan, if you could, I think Matt sent that just to the hosts and panelists, so the attendees.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we should probably read the question.
Okay,
I thought they saw it.
I didn't notice either. No problem.
Yeah.
Matt asked, how does the RDA navigate sponsorship contributions? For example, the 10% on an ACOA or IET funded project. This sponsorship contribution is often a challenge. Volunteers have to fundraise, solicit donations, etc. And this effort takes away from the energy of doing the actual project.
Yeah. So there's a 2-part answer here, and I'm going to give you the one part that's not really the answer, but it's a setup for the real answer. And I come from an industry where well, I'm a leadership consultant, and I understand how business works. And when I'm coaching and teaching executives how to move forward, one phrase I really like is that business works at the speed of trust. And so what, a lot of people say is like, well, you got to take the guy out for golf. Well, that in a way is not going to be able to establish a relationship or establish trust. So what I've been quite concerted to do, and it's not through any means of manipulation, I just recognize that trust is an essential facet for relationships. Mm-hmm. And so I made strong connections with IET. There's an individual, Dwight, who's local. He's the economic development officer for IET. I just wanted him to see who we were, how we operate, what we do, what our vision is, what our purpose is. And because of our transparency and our willingness to connect with him, he has faith in us. He has trust in us that if he offers us funding, then we're not going to surprise him in any way, that he'll always know what we're doing, and we'll be highly transparent of it. Same thing with our relationships with those in ACOA, like Olivia and Ashley, and well, Goody Hutchin's been here quite a bit as well. So that said, I've realized that groundwork is really important for that 10%. because what we had to do then is to find that 10% through means of either private or organizational funding outside. And so it's the same thing: building network, building understanding, coming up with relationships of mutual benefit. So a good example is our Starlight Trail upgrade, which needed 10% investment. The majority of it came from an association called the Tourism Southwest, which is an organization of tourist businesses up West Newfoundland who pool their money to find ways to promote through marketing or other advancements. All of West Newfoundland accommodation businesses and other tourist-focused businesses are elated that we're going to have a landmark world-class trail right here in southwestern Newfoundland. So their investment was of mutual gain. So for a board to consider that 10%, you just got to get strategic. And all you got to do is you got to figure out, well, who shares the same needs as we do, and make a connection. If you can establish a high level of trust, they're very willing to contribute that kind of funding. We also find funding from private organizations for our 10% as well. Some of them are benevolent because they realize that all their employees come from this community, and how better to take care of your community than to invest in their growth and their economic and social growth. But really, it's just simply about going out and finding those just that share your interest and have the funds to support it.
Ron, you answered this question in the chat. Rebecca asked how often the board meets, and you said they meet once a month and subcommittees meet as needed. I kind of have a follow-up on that. How is the board elected? How is the board appointed?
Yes, so every annual general meeting, we have an election. So we have 15 communities, and they've all grouped into 9 groups, and so each 9 subcommittee or group committees, communities have 2 seats. And the way that the bylaws were set up a long time ago was that each community had 2 seats, and they were 2-year tenures with overlapping tenures. So, Bojan, if you and I were from Millville, for example, my seat's available for the AGM last night, but you still have another year to go. And that way, there's a consistency with how that community is represented. So there was another point I wanted to make though first. Oh my God, I just lost it.
Okay.
I wanted to make it. But yeah, so what we do then is we're always refreshing who's on our board. We picked up 4 new board members last night. And we have a lot of other on a board to keep the momentum going. And what we've been finding is the selection of the board tends to reflect the interests that the community has in the future work of the CVADA. And so, and also it's those that have a lot to gain from the growth of the community. For example, we've got somebody who is a real estate agent who joined us last night, simply because her business, of course, grows as the value of living here goes higher. So yeah, that's how it basically works. And we use our volunteer fire department fire chief as our officiator because he's a trusted individual. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Ron, who does the voting? Is it just people who attend the AGM, or do the actual communities themselves have a role in putting forward?
Again, that's all what you want to design in the bylaws. That's completely how you want to design the bylaws. The way our bylaw is structured, though, is as long as we can get 25 people in a room, and we have published that the AGM is going to be available and where it's going to be available, and we kept the doors open to all within a month. Then as long as 25 people are in the door, we can vote. And because 25 is our quorum. But last night we had 110, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the AGM before that was 130 people who attended as well. Yeah.
So there's a new question there, Boyan, from Cheryl.
Yeah. Cheryl asks, what happens in the event that there are no new nominees for seats at your AGM?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there have been times that the CVUDA has been a bit emaciated. The way the bylaws are structured, and again, you can structure the bylaws however you wish, but the way the bylaws are structured is that we have to have at least 9 individuals for quorum. And so if for some reason during the corporation's living, one person resigns from the board can never vote or motion until they have quorum. There is a mechanism in the bylaws that allow us to appoint individuals from the community, and provided there's success of an 80% vote, we can appoint anybody as a board of director from any part or any community in the valley. And in fact, that's actually how I became a member of the board, by accident, really. I didn't know anything about the CBADA, and Travis and Chris and Ash were in the board, and someone resigned. They did the math and realized that there was only 8 of them. So I got a phone call, participated in a meeting by a phone call, accepted the nomination, and thought nothing of it, not realizing what I got myself involved in. Um, but but yeah, so there is a protective mechanism in our bylaws to allow that to happen. But the corporation does get into crisis if we do not have a quorum elected a board of 9 at an AGM, and that could force the corporation to insolvency.
And so, are you still speaking to those 3 people that got you
Yeah.
hooked?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And two of the 3 of them were at the board meeting last night, and they're not part of the board anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. Lots of care for each other. Yeah.
So, folks, we have time for a few more questions if you'd like to put them into the chat box there. And I guess, Ron, my last question for you would be, I love the work you guys are doing, and I love the model itself. And yet, when we first started this session, you commented, maybe before we started recording, that there aren't many rural development or regional development associations left,
Mm.
and the ones that are, there's may not be quite as active as they used to be.
Yep.
Why aren't more people taking this approach? It seems like it's a brilliant approach. So why do you think it's not as more or more
Yeah,
prominent?
it's a great point. So, look, the RDAs were created as a protest, primarily, with a lot of anger behind them, an amazing amount of anger behind them, but self interest and self care at a community level.
Yeah.
Uh, and there was like over 50 or 60 of them, and they even had an umbrella corporation that was based out of Gander, and they were thriving. Uh, but then they became, because the government flipped over and realized, okay, you know what, we shouldn't emaciate our rural communities. Maybe we should take care of them, and the only way that they could take care of them was by funding these RDAs. But that all came uh, crashing down at the Municipalities Act that came out, and the Municipalities Act ended the funding of the RDAs and introduced the local service district model.
Yep.
And the reason for that was because then the government had far more control over how the money was spent, because they didn't like having these communities decide where the money went on their behalf. And that killed pretty much almost all the RDAs in Newfoundland. They let go of their staff. They sold out their office space, and it was just pretty much done. No, I think there's 6 or 7 RDAs that are functioning somehow. One of them is actually up here in St. George. But they're all like struggling for identity to some degree in many cases. The interesting thing is, I got a friend of mine who's now he worked for the UN for quite a bit, and now he's an ambassador for Canada. And it was a fantastic conversation, because he's actually come up with the fact that there's an economic community that's a global analysis party or committee of how do communities and how do governments operate and successfully. And he was quite entertained by the fact that the UN has now come to the point where the best way in which a government to operate is by the exact same model as an RDA, and it's the exact same model. And he thought that was fascinating. And so his joke was, is everybody thinks Newfoundland's behind, but now actually there are 7 groups ahead. of way. So when a government or a head of state of a real country in the world comes to the UN and says, like, how should I structure my government? They're actually telling them the RDA model, not because of Newfoundland, but it's just the analysis of how organizations take care of themselves. Um, so yeah, again, we're behind the times and we're ahead of the times all at the same time. You know what? But that said, it's all coincidence and it's fun to talk about over beer. But in reality, our RDA is working for us. It's useful for us. Like I know everyone's considering a Chamber of Commerce, and that's a great model. The Chamber of Commerce, though, and I've been a participant in Chamber of Commerces in Ontario. They're great for working deals, networking, making connections. But you need a construct primarily outside of it to actually manifest what you want to deal. And that model doesn't work for us. I've been very closely walking through what they're doing up at Fogo Island, and I've really got myself quite educated at exactly what Zeta is doing and how they're doing it. And I'm entertained by that. But I think that in its whole totality wouldn't work for this organization or this community, which is why we're thinking about creating our own inside the umbrella of the RDA. So I think we're very fond of the way the RDA serves our purpose. It's a very lightweight system. It doesn't cost money unless we put money into it. So it doesn't have a lot of overhead. And it only has overhead when we're actually getting something done, and it's funded by an external source. And this community does not have a lot of money to throw around. We don't have property taxes, as you know. We're not a municipality or a taxing LSD. So the RDA model is just a perfect fit for us to get things done and to create what we need to create.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any last questions? There's a comment in there from Matt Ron that talks a little bit about you commented on the Fogo Island process and things like that. But any other questions from our attendees?
Yeah, Matthew put something in here. He says it seems similar to the Fogo Island process and its trajectory, and of course, Fogo Island still has social enterprise initiatives like Shorefast and Fogo Island Co-op. Well, that's news to me, Matthew, because I did not know they had an RDA there. I did know that they had Shorefast and the Fogo Island Co-op. But those are mechanisms that are for profit, but for social gain. And really, it's a network of social enterprises. And I'm very fond of it. I have to say, I'm very fond of it. I'm not totally convinced, though, that our community would profit if it was just that. If we transformed our CVADA RDA into a social enterprise, I think we would lose out on a couple other things. Like a good example is the CVADA is still focused on very much a social experience. So we host acoustic night Tuesday nights at our wetlands building. No cost, no fee, no nothing. We open the door and 25 people show up with their guitars and their voices. And I'll tell you, the tourists that drop in that night, they go home with a story. And so it's things like that I didn't really see that was founded in the structure of our social enterprise, which is why we're still fond of sticking to our RDA.
Yeah. And Ron,
go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say before we close, just a quick question. If somebody wanted to start something similar like RDA, what's your best advice to them?
Steal. Copy our bylaws. Take them. We don't own them. They're yours. You want them? Have them. Copy what works. As I said before, I'm a leadership consultant. I work with a lot of organizations who are startups, who want to expand and grow to a large size, and who even run. And I'm even right now consulting to governments. Everybody has the best of intentions, but unfortunately, unconscious bias is our biggest enemy. Because we have expertise, we think we know it, and we know it all, and we've got great ideas, and we're so married to those great ideas that we try to execute on them. Well, my advice is, you're probably going to come up with great ideas, and they're probably going to be awesome, but instead invest on what works. So I would, if you're going to do an RDA, I would invest more time in interviewing ours, interviewing the other RDAs. So just copy what works. And the reason for why I'm saying that is because it's amazing how complex this is. Like the complexity level is so underappreciated uh, because you're dealing with social aspects and personal opinions. And there's always the two and three in the community that are the disturbers, right? And there's always the two and three that are highly benevolent. You can never predict what they're going to do. You can't predict what the tourist is going to do. You can't predict what the economy is going to do. And so the complexity is so profound that you don't realize that the value of the bylaws and the constitution of an organization that's lasted since 1972 is the fact that it just works. And I can tell you, you realize, you read our bylaws and constitutions, you'll see flaws. You'll see, well, what about this? What about that? And there's a hole there and there's a hole that. My argument is, guess what? It worked for decades. So, we're imperfect as humans. Why would we try to build a corporation that's perfect? Because why don't we just accept the human or the corporation that's lasted this long and just go with it? Because we've looked at ways in which we could update or modify or improve our RDA. A good example was a suggestion that we don't necessarily hold the aspect that only two people from each community can be on the board. Because right now, hell, you could drive through Millville, Woodville, and Codroy, and Grand Codroy, and not even know that you actually left and went into other communities. They're just different names now. Back then, they were far more important, but now that you have a car that's highly efficient, hell, you could drive through all the communities, not even know that you went through 15 of them. So it was a great idea, and so we thought, well, why don't we just abolish that out of the bylaw? What came up was, yeah, well, wait a second, but what about the future? So if we actually strip that away, then one family could sit 9 people on a board. And then now the CVAD just became a full ownership of a family, right? It's, oh, crap, you're right. You're totally right. So like of best of intentions, these bylaws are flawed, but work. And so I would suggest just do what works. Now, that said, when you go from RDA to RDA, they all have their different flavors. And but when I looked at the bylaws and the constitutions of the ones in St. George's and ours, they're incredibly similar. The difference between them is their purpose, which is driven by the needs of the community, the skills that are available to that community, and the opportunities that are available to that community. And that's what I've been noticing is makes them unique. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Ron, this has been fantastic. So once again, thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time to sort of share your insights and experiences. And if and when there's a group in the Baccaloo that is interested in doing an RDA, no doubt that we'll be back in touch with you and others involved there to take you up on your suggestion that we do a deeper dive and talk to more people about how it's working there, because it sounds like you got a really fantastic thing going there.
Great. Well, you're very welcome. And we highly encourage all of you to spend your summer down here in the Codroy Valley. We've got great accommodations, incredible views, and we'd love to have you over.
Yeah. When's the trail get done?
The trail, so we're doing it in 3 phases. First phase is going to be to cut out a brand new trail up to the summit. Because the summit's the destination, folks. Like if you saw the summit, it's breathtaking. It's just the designer that we have, she said that it's the second best trail experience she's ever had in her life around the globe. So it's there. Anyway, first phase is to cut a new path. Second phase will be to redo the one that already exists. And we're doing that so that we don't limit anybody's ability throughout any time to actually have access to the summit. And then the third phase will be trailing on the top of the Table Mountain that takes you from gulch to gulch. So I'd say by the end of this year, you'll have 5 kilometers of new trail. By end of next year, you're going to have 11. And by third phase is done, you'll have 21 kilometers of new trail.
Sounds fast. Yep, definitely. I'll look forward to my next visit. So
yeah, well, welcome to have you for sure. Yeah. Our doors are always open.
All right. Yeah. Thank you again, Ron. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And just as we've done before, this session, we'll make the recording of the session available. So if there's other folks that you think would be interested in this conversation, you'll be getting a link from us within the next day or two that you can share with others. So, Once again, thanks Boyan and Ron and Matt for helping get this all going. And thank you all for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Chris. Take
See you,
care.
folks.